Hey guys, Sean here, creator and one of the co-hosts of Table Reads. For our inaugural video, I just wanted to show you around our brand new studio that we just finished completely renovating. Now, part of the reason we did this is so that we can fit all four of our co-hosts in the studio and all be on a podcast at the same time, which we have yet to do. The other reason is we would like to have a video element to the podcast when we work out exactly how we want to do that, and we wanted it to look nice for you. So I'm going to give you a quick tour around, let you know what our thoughts were behind some of our decisions here, and give you a tech overview in case you're into that kind of thing. So, without further ado, let's
fade in.
So you can get the full scope of the redesign, here are a couple pictures of the studio as it was. It's very different, somehow feels a lot more cramped, and maybe even too harshly lit, even though I didn't really change anything about the lights. All of this, and it still doesn't quite fit 4 people properly. So I've addressed all that. I squeezed in an extra person and somehow made it feel bigger. So getting started here is the view coming into the studio. This is the main podcast desk here. If you look over to the left, you'll see the computer that runs the whole podcast, and it's connected via wires to everything over here. All the wires are, of course, as hidden as humanly possible. And then if we come over here, this is where my co-hosts sit. So each station has its own dedicated power. We read our scripts digitally to avoid the sound of page turns, and so we might bring a laptop or a tablet or just a phone to read on, and it's nice to have the ability to charge however someone wants, whether it's with USB ports or a standard plug. Everyone also has their own headphone jack and volume control for their headphones, so no one is getting their ears blasted out, and they don't have to depend on me running everything to not drive them deaf. And then if they need to cough or sneeze or whatever, I have a mute button for their mic, and you'll see these two are quite close together, and that's because Kelly is left-handed, so she gets one on the left-hand side, because I built this desk specifically with my co-hosts in mind. So over here we have basically the command center for the entire podcast. This is where I sit and I run everything while we record. So unlike a lot of podcasts, we actually record everything as if it were going out live. So I play the intro for everyone to hear while we're recording, all the production music, everything, as if we were broadcasting live out to a radio station. That really helps keep us more in the moment, and more immersed and more entertained, really. And if we're feeling entertained, then I feel like we're more entertaining, if that makes sense. So that's how we do that. It also really, really helps cut down on how much I need to edit after the fact, which is a big bonus for me. So here's the board. It's a Behringer X32 producer, and it has 32 channels in and out of the computer. So I have my 4 mics here. Me, Kelly, Josh, Jeff, who needs to be labeled. And I'm on Kelly's mic right now because mine would just be in the way of the video. So I can control everything here. This is the iPad that plays the music, which is up here. And I'll get to that in a moment. This is Farajo by Rogue Amoeba Software, which is an app running on the computer, which goes to its own channel here, and is controlled by this MIDI pad here. So if I want to fade in, I just hit that button, and then the volume's controlled here. And then I also have special effects set up. If there's like a god character or an echoey chamber or something, this effect really helps. And I can turn on and off any of us with just a button push, so it's not making everyone echoey. And then up here, I have this iPad just specifically for reading scripts. I also have my show notes over here. So I write the previously ons in advance most of the time. And when I have written them in advance, I just read them from here and then swipe over and start reading the script. That easy. So over here where we have the soundboard, this app is called iJingle Webcaster. A lot of people have asked about that. I find it very versatile. It works really well. I used to play all the production from this as well, but it's a lot easier having that on a separate track. So I've got 3 columns of background music, some action-y stuff, some creepy, suspenseful stuff, and then lighter fare, sad music or happy music, just the softer, more gentle stuff in this column. And these columns will automatically autoplay. So if we have an action sequence that goes on for an extended amount of time, we can have that music for it running as long as we need to, essentially. And then I've got sound effects over here in the last column. That's a fun noise. And then this is just some background sounds, like if we're in a subway. I believe we played this one on Shazam. Or just some general city backgrounds. These aren't often needed, but sometimes a scene can be added to by it. If someone's on the beach, there's the sound of an ocean. It's great. So that's all of that. Everything is controlled here. The keyboard goes to the computer, and that just is used for starting and stopping our recording. And that's that. Let's move on to the computer. So while we record the show, over here to the side, doing the actual recording, is my iMac running Adobe Audition. I mostly use Audition because I'm paying for the Adobe suite anyway for my day job, so I may as well get as much use out of it as possible. The other reason is it does multi-track with my board. So every mic, every source of sound goes into its own individual channel over here. So as we're recording, it's not really zoomed in enough for you to see, but it's putting down a track for everything. Right now, if you see that green light bouncing, that's my mic. If I play the intro to the show, that plays further down.
Lights, camera, action.
You see that bouncing green down at the bottom. That's all the production playing on a separate track.
Just so they can mock it.
And then the music plays on the track right above that, which right now is only coming through on one channel for some reason. There we go. That's just a loose cable issue, and I do check that every time before we start recording, because it's just a cable thing. There's not much you can do about it on a permanent basis. So that allows me to, since we're all coming in on different channels, even my special effects come in on an FX channel all by itself. So I can make an echo less noticeable or more noticeable in the editing process. And if someone has a coughing fit and doesn't hit their mute switch, or if there's just some overlap in talk that covers up someone else's good comment, I can go into the individual mic track and mute that individual voice. It's super, super handy. Back in the old days of doing this podcast, before I brought in Josh and Kelly and Jeff, we recorded on a completely different setup, and everything just went into 2 channels, a left and a right. So everything was mixed, and if we wanted to go back in later and tighten something up, it was impossible. So this is a much better setup. And it's really a minimal process for me. And there you have it. That's our DAW program. So the podcast studio is not a 100% dedicated podcast studio. Honestly, I only podcast in here once a week, typically. So this is my office the rest of the time. So while the podcast desk takes up the majority of the room, I like to not have it look like it's just a podcast studio. I don't want to cover the walls in acoustic foam that looks like acoustic foam. I think it's ugly. So since this is my desk area, I've got many of my more loved books over here on the left and a bunch of nerd stuff on these shelves above the computer. Got my Harry Potter stuff, my Mjolnir, some Lord of the Rings swords. Over on the far right is my Muppet Whatnot, who I have named Alan Smithy and made our Table Reads mascot. So over here is some more non-podcast stuff. In addition to being a podcaster, my other hobby is making and collecting movie prop replicas. So I have a bunch of those on display here and on another shelf that's across from me and sort of behind Jeff in the studio. And then over here to the left, you'll see two acoustic panels. I made these myself from a tutorial on YouTube. I think they work really well. Over here are the other two, and here's that other display. So this is how I keep the space looking nice and reflecting my personality so that it's not just some blank foam-filled podcasting space, and that's important to me. So that's honestly about all I can think to say about the studio at this point. So I hope you enjoyed this little tour. Please listen to Table Reads and subscribe on the podcasting platform of your choice. We're on essentially all of them. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe on YouTube as well. We're going to do some more behind-the-scenes type videos like this, and maybe even make the podcast into an optional video podcast. You don't need the video to enjoy it, but the video might add something for you. It's still in process. We're figuring it out. Anyway, like, subscribe. We're doing new episodes every single week, and we'll see you next time. Until then, we'll miss you.
The end.